Hello and welcome to this episode of my tutorial video series. The subject of this video is macroeconomics and the topic is theory of demand. Theory of demand is singularly the most important chapter of macroeconomics, and the postulations made in this theory are cornerstone of many other microeconomic as well as macroeconomic theories. Theory of demand is pretty big chapter, and one video is not enough to do full justice to the chapter, and I won't do that. So this is basically part 1, and in part 1 we shall discuss these 4 subheadings, that is definition of demand, factors influencing demand, law of demand, and demand function. Let us start with definition. First we come to definition. What is demand? We have studied need, want and demand in marketing, where need is the feeling of deprivation of basic amenities like clothing, shelter, foods, etc. And when that need is directed to a particular product, then that becomes want. And when that want is backed by purchasing power, then it becomes demand. Now we have studied Maslow's hierarchy of needs and other things, and primary demand and secondary demand, etc. So I am not going into nitty-gritty of marketing. Basically, demand is the desire to have a commodity which is backed by the purchasing power of the consumer. That means when the consumer is able as well as willing to purchase a commodity, then he is said to have demand for that commodity, right? Now we come to factors influencing demand. What are the factors that influence demand? There are a number of factors that influence demand, that is the quantity which a consumer is demanding. These are price of the commodity, income of the consumer, tastes, preferences, prices of related commodities. Related commodities mean either substitute or complementary. Right? And many other things. So these are the factors that influence demand. Naturally, price and income are the most important and strongest factors among all of the factors influencing demand. Now, price of a commodity naturally influences the quantity purchased of that commodity, because it is rational that a consumer will purchase a commodity more when its price is less, and he will purchase less when its price is high. Next, income. The consumer won't be able to purchase anything, whatever be the price, if he or she does not have any income, right? And as income of the consumer increases, he will purchase more of the commodities, and when income falls, he or she will purchase less of the commodities. Correct? Next, tastes and preferences. Tastes and preferences also influence the quantity demanded of a commodity. What I am preferring today may not be in my preference, say after 6 months or 1 year. Tastes and preferences of consumers change with time. So when tastes and preferences change, that impact the quantity purchased of a commodity. Next, prices of related commodities, that is, prices of substitute and complementary goods. When two goods are substituted, that means one good can be substituted for another good. In that case, if price of one commodity increases, then demand for the other commodity will also increase, because since the goods are substitutes to each other, so the consumer will prefer that good whose price is relatively less. And in case of complementary goods, say for example car and petrol, in these cases, if price of car increases, in that case quantity demanded of petrol will fall, because as price of car increases, quantity demanded of car will fall. As a result, people will purchase less petrol because less cars are on the road. So these are the factors that influence quantity demanded of a commodity. As I have said earlier, that these two, price and income, are the strongest among all the factors influencing demand. Next, and very important, is law of demand. What is law of demand? Law of demand shows the relationship between price of a commodity and quantity demanded for that commodity. Ceteris paribus assumptions are considered. That means when other things, other factors, income, tastes, preferences, prices of related commodity, etc., remain constant, then what will be the relation between price of a commodity and quantity demanded for the commodity is stated in the law of demand. Law of demand was first introduced in 17th century. Later on, Professor Alfred Marshall made mathematical and graphical explanation of law of demand. Now, what the law of demand states? The law of demand states that quantity demanded of a commodity is inversely related to price. Other things remaining same. That is the ceteris paribus assumptions. Thus, when price of a commodity increases, quantity demanded of that commodity falls, and when price of a commodity falls, quantity demanded of that commodity increases, provided other things do not change, other things remain constant. This is law of demand. That means your price is the independent variable and quantity demanded is the dependent variable, and these two variables are inversely related. Because of this inverse relation between price of a commodity and quantity demanded of the commodity, the demand curve is downward sloping. Now I am erasing this part because I need space. Okay. Yeah, I am erasing this part. So the law of demand states, when price of a commodity increases, quantity demanded falls, and when price falls, quantity demanded increases, other things remaining constant. So graphically we can explain law of demand. Actually, a law of demand directs us to derivation of the demand curve. Let us measure quantity on x-axis and price on y-axis. When price is px1, quantity demanded is qx1. So we get point A. Correct. As price of the commodity, price of X falls from Px1 to Px2, let this be Px2. As a result of fall in price of the commodity, quantity demanded will increase. So new quantity demanded is Qx2. So we get this point, say B. Again, if price falls from Px2 to Px3, say this is Px3, then quantity demanded increases to Qx3. So we get point C. And the line joining this point is the demand curve. That is D dash is the demand curve, and it is downward sloping. Correct? Now this is the shape of the demand curve for all normal commodities. Since it is a law, it has certain exceptions. That means there are certain goods which do not follow the law of demand. Let us see what are the exceptions to the law of demand. Exceptions to the law. Number one, essential commodities. The commodities which are absolutely essential do not follow the law of demand. Now, what is meant by absolutely essential commodities? Say for example, salt. Salt is absolutely essential commodity, and secondly, the proportion of money income spent on salt is a very small percentage of the total income of the consumer. Now, salt does not follow the law of demand. That means if price of salt falls, then the consumer will not consume more salt, or if price of salt increases, the consumer will not decrease his consumption of salt. Why? Because number one, salt is an essential commodity, and number two, the proportion of money income spent on salt is very small related to the money income of the consumer. Next, commodities purchase of which can't be postponed. Example, medicine. Whatever be the price of medicine, a patient has to take medicine. That means even price of medicine increases or price of medicine falls, the patient will consume the medicine as prescribed by the doctor. He cannot reduce or increase. If price of medicine falls, no patient will consume more of the medicine, isn't it? So for commodities whose purchase can be postponed, do not follow the law of demand. Right? Now let us see what should be the shape of the demand curve in these cases. You see, as price changes, there is no change in consumption. That is, whether price falls or increases hardly makes any difference in consumption of the commodity by the consumer. So whatever be the price on excessive measured quantity and on excessive measured price, whatever be the price, the quantity remains same. This is the quantity. If price is px1, the consumer is purchasing this much. If price is px2, falling to px2, the consumer is purchasing this much. Same quantity is purchased by the consumer, even price is falling. Same will happen if price increases, goes this way. Same thing will happen. Either way price moves, same thing will happen. That is, that will have no impact on the quantity purchased by the consumer. And for medicine, same graph applies. Correct? Next, time of inflation. Time of inflation. What is inflation? Inflation is continuous increase in price, not only increase in price, the increase must be continuous. So prices of commodities are continuously increasing. So a consumer who is willing to purchase an LED TV set on a excessive measured quantity and on excessive measured price. Suppose the consumer is planning to purchase an LED TV set, but the price of TVs are increasing, correct? Because there is inflation in the economy. The law states when price increases, consumer will purchase less. But in this case, the consumer will not think in that way. The consumer will think that tomorrow the price will be so high that it will go beyond his reach. So better to buy today. All the consumers will think alike that as price is continuously increasing, tomorrow or day after tomorrow it will go beyond their reach. So it is better to buy now. In that case, demand curve will be upward sloping. As price is increasing, px1 to px2 to px3 etc. Quantity demanded is also increasing, qx1, qx2, qx3. This is in time of inflation. Right? Same thing will happen when there is deflation in the economy. Suppose there is deflation in the economy. What is deflation? Deflation is opposite of inflation. That is, price is continually falling. Price is falling without break. On x-axis we measure quantity and on y-axis we measure price. So, as price is continuously falling, the law states that the consumer will purchase more. If price falls, his real income increases, other things remaining absolutely same. So the consumer will naturally purchase more. No, the consumer will not think in that way. The consumer will think tomorrow price will be lower, day after tomorrow price will be further lower, so let us postpone purchase now. The consumer will think, let the price fall further. When the price will be much lower, then the consumer will purchase. Now he will not purchase. That means when price falls, quantity demanded also falls. When price is falling, in case of inflation, it's the upward sloping demand curve. And in case of deflation, it will be downward sloping. Price is falling from px1 to px2 to px3. As a result, quantity demanded is also falling from qx1, qx2 to qx3. Right? This is the demand curve, dd dash. This is demand curve during inflation. It is upward sloping. Consumers are purchasing more as price is increasing because they are apprehensive that one day the price will go beyond their reach. And in case of deflation, the opposite is happening, that price is falling continually. So the consumers are thinking that let the price fall further. When price becomes much lower, then the consumer will purchase. So he or she is postponing the purchase. That means price is falling and quantity demanded is also falling. Correct? Next, there are conspicuous consumptions. Conspicuous consumption. What is conspicuous consumption? Conspicuous consumption means consuming something not for its intrinsic value. The consumer is consuming something not for its intrinsic value, but to express their richness. Say for example, diamond necklace or costly fur coats, etc. Now, when prices of these commodities increase, the consumer purchases the commodity to show off his richness and to satisfy his or her ego. Correct? So, in those cases, even price increases, this is px1, this is px2, this is qx1, QX2. As price increases, consumption increases. The consumer may say, okay, when the price of the necklace was only 50,000, I did not notice it. But when it has become 1,50,000, now I am interested to buy it. Why? Because that satisfies my ego. So these are the exceptions to the law of demand. Correct? So now I will come to demand function, very important subheading in the theory of demand. Now I am coming to demand function. Correct? So this is the downward sloping demand curve. Now why downward sloping? I am explaining mathematically here. So this is the normal shape of demand curve. That is, when price falls, quantity demanded increases, or if price increases, quantity demanded falls. Other things remaining same. And these are the exceptions to the law. That is, essential commodities like salt, medicines, etc. Commodities, the purchase cannot be postponed. Purchase of medicine cannot be postponed. Whatever be the price, the patient has to purchase the medicine. Next, during inflation, the consumer purchases more of the commodity because he thinks that tomorrow the commodity will go beyond his reach. So, during inflation, as price increases, quantity demanded also increases. And during deflation, the opposite thing happens. Here the demand curve is upward sloping from left to right. Here the demand curve is downward sloping from right to left. During inflation, price continuously increases, and during deflation, price continuously falls. This is PX1, this is PX2, this is PX3. So as the price is falling, the consumer is postponing the purchase, thinking that he will purchase the commodity when it becomes much cheaper. So price is falling, quantity demanded is also falling. And now this is the demand curve for conspicuous consumption or conspicuous goods, which the consumers purchase not for their intrinsic value but to satisfy their ego. For example, costly diamond necklace or fur coat, etc. Right? So I am now shifting to demand function, and I am erasing whatever I have done in the whiteboard because I need space. There is not much space in my whiteboard, so I have to erase this part. Correct? Yeah. Now, demand function. As I have already said, demand, that is quantity demanded, the function of many things. P is price, Y income, and many other things. And in law of demand, we are only concerned with the relationship between price and quantity, other things remaining same. So in demand function, Q is the quantity demanded is equal to function of P, Fp. The standard form of demand function is Q equals to A minus Bp. when Q is the quantity demanded and P is the price of the commodity. Now, now if we compare this equation with standard straight line equation, that is y equals to mx plus c, this is the standard straight line equation. If we compare these two, Q equals to A minus BP and y equals to ms plus c, we understand that it is a straight line, right? Now, like C, here A is the intercept, that is the positive intercept of y-axis here, correct? And here M is positive, that coefficient of x is positive, here coefficient of P is negative. This means this is downward sloping, correct? Now since it is a straight line, slope of the line will be same throughout. Now what is the slope? Slope equals to delta Q by delta P equals to sorry 0 minus B, that is minus B. So minus B, this is the slope of the demand curve. This is free of P, there is no P attached to it. This means whatever be the price, the slope of the demand curve remains same. The slope remains same, whatever be the price. This angle remains same. Now, this is not necessary that the demand curve will be a straight line. It can be this is linear, but demand curve can be non-linear or curvilinear or rectangular hyperbola. In those cases, that is non-linear, curvilinear or rectangular hyperbola. The equation is Q equals to AP to the power minus B. This will be the equation of the demand curve when it is not a straight line, rather it is non-linear or curvilinear or rectangular hyperbola. That is, the shape will be like this. Now, if we differentiate Q with respect to P, let us see what is happening. Del Q dQ dP equals to A into minus B to the power minus B into P to the power minus B minus 1 equals to minus AB P to the power minus B minus 1, correct? Now you see B is not independent like here. As as P changes, value of this also changes, even if B is constant. If price changes, then the whole thing changes. That means the slope changes. That is what is happening, because in every point we find different slopes. When the demand curve is linear, the slope is same, fixed. But when the demand curve is non-linear, that is curvilinear, slopes are different on different points. Here, this will be the slope. At this point, this will be the slope. That is, slope of the demand curve at a point when the demand curve is non-linear is found out by drawing a tangent on that point. So slope of the demand curve at this point is the slope of the straight line which is tangent to that point, say AB. AB is the tangent to a point K on demand curve. So slope of demand curve, say dt dash here, at point K is the slope of the tangent AB. AB is tangent to demand curve at point K. That is tan of this angle. Suppose this is point L. This is say MN. MN is a straight line which is tangent to the demand curve at point L. So slope of the demand curve at point L is the slope of MN, that is tan of this angle. So we see that when the demand curve is non-linear or curvilinear, we find this is the demand function, and in case of linear, this is the demand function. Q equals to A minus BP when the demand curve is linear. And when the demand curve is non-linear, we find this is the demand function. Correct? Yeah. So what we have learned? We have learned what is demand. What is that? Demand is the desire to have a commodity backed by adequate purchasing power. That means when a person is able as well as willing to purchase a commodity, then the person is said to have demand for that commodity. Next, what are the factors that influence demand? There are many factors that influence demand, like price of the commodity, income of the consumer, prices of related commodities, that is prices of substitute and complementary goods, tastes and preferences of the consumer, habits, customs, etc. There are many factors that influence quantity demanded. Out of those factors, the price of the commodity and income of the consumer are most important and strongest so long as influence of the factors are concerned. And in this episode, since we are learning law of demand, we are only concerned with price, that is the relationship between price of a commodity and quantity demanded of that commodity, other factors remaining unchanged. Now, so law of demand states that demand for a commodity and price of the commodity are inversely related. That means when price of a commodity falls, quantity demanded increases, and when price of the commodity increases, quantity demanded falls, other things remaining constant. This is law of demand. And the law of demand states what the shape of the demand curve should be. The shape of the demand curve is downward sloping because of the inverse relationship between price and quantity, where price is independent variable and quantity is dependent variable. They have inverse relationship between them. As a result, the demand curve slopes downward from left to right. This is the normal shape of the demand curve. Now, law of demand has certain exceptions. And what are the exceptions? Like absolutely essential commodities like salt, even if price of salt increases, the consumer does not decrease his consumption of salt. At the same time, if price of salt falls, the consumer does not consume more salt. Goods, the purchase of which can be postponed, cannot be postponed. Say for example, medicine. A patient has to take the medicines irrespective of the prices of the medicine. Whether the price of the medicine falls or increases, that hardly makes any change in consumption of medicine by the patient. Then that is conspicuous consumption or conspicuous goods which are purchased by certain section of the society, not for the intrinsic value but to satisfy their ego, like costly diamond necklace, etc. Then exceptions take place during inflation as well as deflation. In the time of inflation, price rises continuously and the consumer becomes apprehensive that one day, that means tomorrow or day after tomorrow, the price will be so high that he won't be able to purchase. So the consumer hurries up to price the commodity. So as price increases, quantity demanded also increases. And during deflation, the opposite thing happens. That is, price is falling continuously. And the consumer thinks that he or she will purchase when the commodity becomes much cheaper. So he or she postpones its purchase. So in that case, as price falls, quantity demanded also falls. Right? So these are the exceptions to the law of demand. Then we come to demand function. This is the straight line demand function. Q equals to A minus Bp, where B is the slope of the demand curve. If you differentiate Q with respect to P, dQ dP equals to minus B. This signifies that demand curve is downward sloping. And this is the demand function when the demand curve is non-linear or curvilinear, which takes a shape of rectangular hyperbola, and the end of demand function becomes Q equals to AP to the power minus B, where Q is the quantity demanded, P is the price. And we see here, as we differentiate Q with respect to P, we find minus AB P to the power minus B minus 1. So this part is not free of P. P is attached to it. So as P changes, the whole thing changes, and dQ/dP also changes. That means the slope of the curve changes. What we see in this non-linear demand curve, K and L are 2 points on the non-linear demand curve. and the slope of the demand curve at point K is the slope of the line AB, which is tangent to the demand curve at point K. That is tan of this angle, tan of angle B. And the slope of the demand curve at point L is the slope of the tangent MN. MN is tangent to the demand curve at point L. So slope of the demand curve at point L is the slope of the line MN. That is tan of this angle. Correct? So this is demand function. Now we can take one numerical example to see how it is working. Q equals to A minus BP. Suppose P 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when P is 1, what is Q? Q equals to say A, right? Q equals to say 20 minus 5P, sorry 2P. Correct? Now when P is 1, Q equals to 20 minus 2 into 1, that is 20 minus 2 equals to 18. So we get Q equals to 18. Right? When P equals to 2, price is increasing from 1 to 2. Q equals to 20 minus 2 into 2, that is 20 minus 4, that is 16. Correct? When P equals to 3, Q equals to 20 minus 2 into 3, that is 20 minus 6 equals to 14. So we can see that as price is increasing, quantity demanded is falling. Correct? Now I have to erase what for I have written on the whiteboard, as I need space to proceed further. Okay, so I have to erase it. Yeah, demand function, linear and non-linear demand function. In case of linear demand function, the slope of the demand curve remains constant throughout. That is, slope at all the points on the demand curve is same. And for non-linear or curvilinear demand curve, the shape takes a hyperbola one, and the slope of the demand curve is different at different points on it. K and L are 2 points. Let K, L and L be 2 points on the demand curve dd dash. Slope of the demand curve at point K is the slope of the tangent AB. Slope of the demand curve at point L is slope of the tangent MN. Right? Yeah. So I am erasing this part. Now, one question should arise whether the demand curve can touch any axis, or whether the demand curve can intersect any axis. On x-axis we measure quantity and on y-axis we measure price. Now suppose this is the demand curve. D dash. Now what this point D signifies? Point D signifies that price is OD and the consumer is purchasing zero. Consumer is not purchasing anything. That means price of the commodity is so high that the no consumer is purchasing the commodity. So no producer or seller can be so foolish that he will keep the price so high that nobody will purchase. So this is basically nonsense. Basically the line should not touch y-axis because that means at this price there is no consumer in the market. This cannot happen. So theoretically the line should not intersect point Y. In the same way, consider point D dash, that is the point of intersection between demand curve and the x-axis. What does it signify, point D dash? It signifies that the consumers are purchasing this much at zero price. There is no price. Goods are available at free of cost, isn't it? Price is zero and quantity is OD dash. So it is also not sensible. But we often draw the demand curve so that the curve touches both the axes. And what is the reason behind it? The reason behind it is to mathematically explain all other things in the theory of demand. When we shall deeply discuss the slope of the demand curve, elasticity of demand curve, etc., then we can mathematically explain these things by joining the curve. There is no harm if the demand curve intersects both the axes, because that will enable us graphically explain other things. There is point elasticity, there is arc elasticity, etc., which we shall discuss in some other video, not in this video. But to drive the point home, we can draw the demand curve in such a way that it intersects both the axes. There is no harm in it, as without doing that it won't be possible for us to explain the other subtopics of the demand theory. Even if the curve is non-linear, still we will draw the line intersecting both x and y axis. Okay. Yeah. So we have studied in this video what is the definition of demand, what are the factors that influence demand, what is law of demand, what are the exceptions to the law of demand, what is demand function, and what is straight line, that is linear, and non-straight line, that is curvilinear or non-linear or rectangular hyperbola demand curve, and that the slope of a straight line demand curve is constant throughout the curve, and slope of a non-linear demand curve at different points are different, and slope at any point can be calculated by drawing a tangent to that point. Correct? Yeah. I think this is enough for this video. Okay. I believe you have enjoyed this video. Once again, I would ask you to subscribe and like our channel, and please do send your comments, your queries, your suggestions, etc. Thank you for watching this video. Stay well and goodbye.